BF 2042 officially released today, and I've been playing it for a week now in early access. I've got about 50 hours playtime in total, and there was also a day one patch that went out yesterday, so I feel like it's a fair time to assess the initial release now. If you've played it yourself, you'll know that there's a lot of problems with the game, from bugs to network performance. Much of the game feels unfinished. So in this video, I wanted to prioritize some constructive criticism and feedback to the development team as concisely as I can. Ways in which I personally think the game could be improved, and what I think their priorities should be as a Battlefield fan. I think the core of the gameplay in Conquest is fun, and I've already had some great moments playing with friends, but there's definitely a lot of problems with the game holding it back. Top of the list for me would be performance, and when I say that I mean frame rate and server performance. When I think about the time that I've spent with BF 2042 so far, the most fun that I've had was when the frame rate was high and the hit registration was consistent. I have a top spec PC with the latest drivers, and there are times when I'm dropping to 50 FPS on low to medium settings. This makes the game feel sluggish and unresponsive, and it has a huge effect on mouse sensitivity and the feeling of infantry gunplay. If I could achieve a consistent 120 frames per second, I would settle with that for now. Hit registration, as I mentioned, also very inconsistent at the moment. There are plenty of times when I'm shooting at enemies and not damaging them. On top of that, there are also moments where I'm shooting at people, I am damaging them, but I'm not getting any hit markers to reflect that damage. The day one patch yesterday definitely improved things for me in terms of rubber banding and lag. I'm still seeing it a bit, but not as much as before. But I don't think it's solved the problems with hit reg at all. So those two things, frame rate boosts and server improvements, I would put right at the top of my list if I was in charge. Battlefield has got a huge player base on PC, and they're suffering the most at the moment with poor performance. Next on my list is Gunplay. I really liked it in the beta, but I feel like things have changed massively for launch. Most of the guns in the game now feel unsatisfying to use at medium and long ranges, and this is due to the excessive amount of spread and bloom on them. There are a couple of guns that I like the feeling of that I've unlocked so far. The PP29, the PBX and SCAR, they feel quite accurate and powerful in most scenarios. DICE lead game designer Drunksy responded on a Twitter thread that there may be some bugs being looked into with dispersion, spread and bloom increasing too rapidly. So hopefully the gunplay can be improved soon, as ultimately that's what you spend the most time doing in the game. The inconsistency of the feeling of the mouse on PC also has a big impact on this. I feel like there's some baked in acceleration here and heavy input lag from time to time. Switching weapons is quite slow and buggy, unresponsive at times too. Now moving on to bugs, there are a lot of bugs in the game right now that I've experienced, many of them game breaking. From falling through the map, losing control of my mouse, being stuck in crouch, to breakthrough never ending and entering matches where you can't spawn. I think the worst bug at the moment that I've encountered is when you're killed and unable to be revived. You can't redeploy, so your only option is to leave the server or quit the game. That needs to be addressed promptly. There's a really bad UI bug too where teammates turn into enemies. I've seen this with infantry and vehicles, creating confusion for players. I've had several spawn bugs too, spawning out in the open with no cover and spawning in out of bound areas far away from the play space, which kill you after 10 seconds. Next is the overall balance of the game. This will improve naturally over time as DICE look at data, but there are quite clearly some balance problems here. Certain guns, vehicles and vehicle loadouts are substantially better than others and catch-alls. The hovercraft, for example, it's an armoured vehicle that's fast, it has a smoke escape, it's very difficult to shoot the drivers and gunners out, and it can equip an insane grenade launcher that can two-shot infantry in half a second. It can also roadkill them with ease. I've also fired many shots into hovercrafts with the M5 rocket launcher, which have dusted and not applied damage to them, which is quite frustrating. So those four things that I just mentioned, performance, gunplay, bugs and balance, I think that should be the priority right now. And it's clear that the game needed more time in development to alleviate those issues before it launched. So it's understandable why a lot of people that have bought the game are disappointed. Perhaps a delay to March next year would have been better for the state of the game and for the health of the developers working on it. Moving on, we're going to talk about features. DICE have made the game in this way because they wanted to. So some design features will not change, but other features could be added and modified to make improvements, and I'll discuss some of those now. First up, user interface. I would love to be able to scale the heads-up display, removing certain aspects of it and scaling them down. The minimap and squad names on the bottom left, plus the inventory on the bottom right, take up almost 40% of the horizontal space. If I could scale those down a bit, the game would look much cleaner and focus for me. Also being able to zoom and scale the minimap, we've had that in previous games, let's put it in this one too. Customizing weapons in the loadout screen is an awkward experience, having to click each category first when I want to just click on the slots here to change things around. The flow of the UI in general takes many clicks to get where you want to go. The time taken from entering a game to actually controlling your character is too long. I understand why there's a short countdown initially so people can select vehicles and specialists, but after that you get a few fly-throughs of the level and then a cinematic introduction. It just feels like cutscene after cutscene before you're actually in control and playing the game. That could be refined significantly. Hazard Zone is a big disappointment for me. I was looking forward to it and I think it's a game mode that's got huge potential, but currently it's got a very basic metagame, making it difficult to care about my character or the rewards available there. It needs a lot more depth. Initial improvements to that game mode which could be implemented would be to double the player count, reduce the number of bots, reduce the number of data drives, and remove the ability to call in vehicles with guns like the LAT V4 that are clearly overpowered here. It should be more difficult to revive dead teammates too, and maybe increasing the amount of armor that people have, as the time to kill values from the main game mode don't line up with the design philosophy of Hazard Zone. After that, work on a base building or metagame element with more meat on the bones, potentially on the Exodus boat, and offer more interesting and unique rewards and cosmetics for playing it and reaching milestones. There are 22 weapons in total for the launch of the game in All Out Warfare, which feels light to me. A couple more secondaries, LMGs and assault rifles would be welcomed, as well as deeper weapon customization in the attachment selection. It doesn't seem like there's much variety there. DICE have removed the traditional scoreboard from the game, so it would be nice to allow players the option to enable the legacy scoreboard if they want to. Same applies to all chat. Off by default, but with the option to opt in. Some kind of individual stat page would be great too in order to check how you're performing overall. I think there should be official playlists for TDM style game modes on smaller areas where you can hop in and out to get that infantry only fix, level up your guns, etc. Portal would have allowed people to do that, but XP has been disabled at the moment because of XP farming servers, so a solution to that needs to be delivered quickly. Speaking of Portal, I think it really needs persistent servers to foster healthy communities that people can come back to, and features such as mapping out the playable game area in a map or adding objective logic would open up lots of potential there. There's a lack of classic battlefield destruction across the board. Buildings that you would expect to be destroyed by a tank shot or barrage from helicopter rockets can't be. If I had to guess, this is probably a product of moving to 128 players with bigger maps and technical limitations, but some more destruction would be welcomed. It is a staple of Battlefield and it would help the levels feel a bit more alive. First person animations for takedown, again the option to have those would be awesome. It'd be great to queue up with more than 4 people and form a larger party rather than only one squad. For me personally, and for a lot of Battlefield communities, we tend to play in bigger groups, so it's awkward to all join the same server at the moment. Switching squads whilst in game is also missing. Now, the introduction of specialists and removal of defined classes is a big departure from classic Battlefield gameplay. Whilst it has allowed players to have more choice in their weaponry and gadgets, it's reduced the amount of team play in the game, exposed a lot of balance issues, and the franchise has lost some of its identity because of this. Now, I don't expect DICE to do a 180 on this, as specialists will be deeply interwoven with the narrative and monetization in the live service. However, I could see them being tweaked, changed, and potentially branched off into categories where they can only access certain gadgets. Perhaps that would be a nice compromise down the line. Separate factions for specialists would be good too, but I don't see that happening in reality. Some of the voice lines and quips that the specialists make don't fit with the tone of the game either, especially the ones at the end of the round, so give people the option to choose them themselves or turn them off. Finally, although Portal has a server browser, the main game mode does not. Lots of people like to use this feature, especially on PC. It would be good to have it, but in the meantime, a system in place that ensures you don't play the same map twice in a row would make a big difference to variety. If you're queuing up for a match though, you can see what map is loading before you join in the bottom right, so if it's one that you've just played or you don't like, cancel it and requeue until you get a different one. And that's all. Those are my main grievances with the game on launch. There's a lot to be fixed and I hope that DICE are responsive with the updates. They said that there are 2 patches in the works for the near future, and it looks like they've got a new system in place that allows them to push changes and updates without needing to patch the game, which I think is great. In the first week, they temporarily disabled the sensor balls that were causing rubber banding and lag, and then reintroduced them without problem. They also disabled Dozer's shield, fixed it, and then put it back in the game as it had a bug that made you invincible. We don't know the limits of this new system yet. I'm sure they couldn't make huge changes to features with it, but it's good to see it in action and working effectively so far. Thank you for watching, guys. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.